What was it like teaching in the past?
Quite different. I started my school career in a one-room schoolhouse. And there were 3 grades in one room, and then there was another little schoolhouse for the other grades for the rest of until you were in 12th grade. That was a lot different than my experience teaching, which lasted until in the 1990s. I started school in the 30s and then stopped teaching in the 90s, so you can imagine just the difference that there was. For one thing, it was very structured. When I went to school, you sat in a desk in a straight row and you didn't get up until you were told, and it was just a whole different experience. Well, I guess maybe it changed slowly, and by the time I left teaching in the 90s, it was much, much less structured and just a whole different atmosphere. You know, there wasn't as much discipline when I first went to school and I first started teaching. I was pretty strict. I had to be, because you were told, and you did what you were told, and it was just one of those things that students listened. They didn't have a lot of outside interest because we didn't have television or the media that we had today. So the students were more inclined to read and to try to find things out on their own. But it was very different, as you can imagine, especially the discipline part.
What was literature like in the 1950s?
Well, when in the 30s to about the 60s, I'd say, it was mostly classical literature that we had. We had history of the world, of our country, but the books that we read and the novels were in the classic vein. You didn't see words that were common or vulgar. It was very strict, and well, it was interesting. I mean, it wasn't that it wasn't interesting, but it was just a different level. And a lot of it had to do with the classic literature in the past, so that you didn't see new things coming in until about the 50s or 60s, when they started with a lot of theories about space and about other types of civilization that were like, I'm thinking of UFOs and things like that were coming into play. And also it involved a war, World War II. So that completely changed things, because a lot of things we had been isolated from here in our country, but with sending our men overseas, and they came back with a lot of stories, and so that we expanded our knowledge of the world, and that was shown in the literature that we started to read.
And how did this differ from modern times?
With a new type of music and art and literature, and that was a lot different from when I first started. We just would read things from the 15th century to the 19th, and then in the 20th century we started with books like Brave New World and things that had to do with space and other societies. It was a different kind of literature. Well, part of the technology was good, but I don't think all of it was. Certainly there was a vast change in technology from when I went. We just read and wrote. And then at the end of my teaching career, we were starting with computers. But the students weren't using them much because very few had them. So that it was just a matter of, I think the only thing we had in our school was that the attendance in the morning was done by computer, which was very unusual. And we didn't have iPads or typewriter. We used ditto machines to copy things, and there was no modern technology that we have today. But I think some of it took away from the school experience because the kids weren't interested in reading and writing when they could watch a picture on a computer or on a television. And so that we lost some interest in the classics. Well, I think technology is good to a point, but then I think that it's overused so that you don't use your brain as much because you can depend on a machine to add and subtract and, for a lot of things that we had to do on our own, physically and mentally, so that we don't, I think, use as much of our brain today as we used to. But that's just my opinion.